To present you to the conference attendee. From Portugal, we have Luís Miguel Brito, who is a senior lecturer in Estoril, and he teaches heritage interpretation, communication techniques, and Italian language. The title of his presentation is Interpretation Performed by Certified Tourist Guides in Lisbon During the Pandemic. Actually, his his presentation is based upon a questionnaire of 24 licensed guides who were active in the last 11 months, 1 year, performing several different walking tours in Lisbon. It has been a very hard year for tourism. The recovery is starting slowly. I hope that it's going to be the same way as it was before this COVID-19 pandemic. So, Luís, please take the floor and share your presentation.
Thank you so much, Vasilka. I think everyone can see my presentation now. We will just confirm that to me, Vasilka. Can you see my presentation? Well, I hope so. I'm a lecturer.
Sorry, Luís. Yes, we do. It's okay. Excellent.
Okay. So as you said when you were introducing me, I'm a lecturer in a school for tourism, and I teach many people that become guides, that will become guides. So one of the things that I have to talk about is interpretation in my lessons. I saw that many of my colleagues, I was a tour guide as well, but I'm not anymore for the time being. But I saw a lot of colleagues of mine that had problems during this COVID period. So I decided to see how they reacted to the pandemic and what were the ideas that they were having to create walking tours. So I think that interpretation is actually the most important thing that a tourist guide does. And I know that the tourists think the same, because when I did my PhD thesis back in 2010, I asked them what was the most important thing for them in a guide, and 98% of them said that it was interpretation. The second thing was mediation, so the role of the guide being a mediator between the destination and the tourist. The third role was to be a leader, and then not so important were good humor, education, and entertainment. So interpretation is actually the most important thing for a guide. And there are some ideas of interpretation that I would like to share with you. They are not new things for you, but they are just the ideas of Betty Whaler and Rosemary Black back in 2015. So to give deep meanings to a phenomenon is what they say, but I would like to add that it's also important that we should give memorable things, positive memories to the phenomenon, so that people come back to the destination. And mindfulness, Jana Moscardo's concept of mindfulness is also important, because if they are mindful tourists, they will contribute to the preservation of the destination. What is the mission of a tour guide? This is also something that is answered in different ways. But if someone asked me to do it in just one sentence, I would say that interpretation is a means to make the world a better place. And so like that, I would include sustainability, education, and all the things that are part of interpretation. So of course we have the children's 3 ideas to provoke, relate, and reveal, to enhance the visitor's experience. And this is something that I think most of the licensed tour guides who didn't study interpretation, I think they don't do. They don't enhance visitors' experience because they don't usually give them so much experiences. And the tours that they do, and I followed some of the tours with guides when I did this study, some of the tours are not active, they are just passive. The tourists don't contribute to, they are not involved really in the guiding experience. There are several ideas that people could use to involve the tourists, like for instance, collecting garbage. It's something that they do in a tour in Amsterdam, collecting garbage in the streets while walking in the city, if the theme is connected with this. But if it is connected with heritage, for instance, we could ask the people to find out signs of heritage misconservation, either natural or in the buildings. And so we could debate in the tour the misconservation of some of the monuments and some of the plants if the tour is about nature. To change the visitor's attitude and behavior, of course, and to give emotional and intellectual connections to the visitors, it's important. So to involve them, and of course, to give them enjoyment. Why did I started this questionnaire? My motivations were, as I was telling you before, that 90% of the guides were unemployed in the last year because of COVID, and some guides, many of them were living under the standards. They didn't have money sometimes, even for the everyday life. So they looked for other jobs that they didn't like, most of them, and very few created these walking tours in Lisbon that they was selling in the social media and on Facebook and so on. But they were not the majority of the guys. They were just a minority. Just some of them created these walking tours. Now, I had questions about the walking tours that they created, and my questions were: do they use interpretation as we know it? How do they use it? Are they conscious about what is interpretation? And are they being creative when they are designing their walking tours in Lisbon? So what did I do? I started with a literature review, of course, with all the authors that are known: Betty Whaler, Rosemary Black, Thorsten, Jenna Moscardo, and so on. And I wrote the questionnaire. After the questionnaire, I made 8 walking tours with the guides to confirm the answers that they gave in the questionnaire. So the survey was made in Lisbon in January and February 2021. I used Google Forms for the questionnaire. Of course, I'm not going to tell you all about the 44 questions that I made. I'm just going to talk about 22 questions, including the demographic elements. The questionnaire involved 25 licensed guides. There were 20 responses, and of course, the number of guides, as I was telling you, is not very high because they represent 7.1% of the total number of guides in Lisbon. We have 350 guides, more or less, and so it's only 7% my sample. As far as the walking tours are concerned, 19 walking tours were about cultural themes. One was nature-based from the 20 responses that I had. 7 were about literature, about Portuguese writers, which is something that you'd find in every town. 4 of them were about neighborhoods, traditional or industrial neighborhoods, or what happened in the neighborhoods of Lisbon. 3 were about people, about Africans, the slaves that came to Lisbon in long history, who they were, what they did, and so on. Italians, especially the Italians that came because of navigation, and later on also because of music, and the Jews that lived in Lisbon and that once were a very important part of the people in the town. 2 about music, traditional music, the fado, and this I should consider the best walking tour, and another one about opera. It's interesting to say that they used a lot of music, of course, during the walking tours, the 2 colleagues that make these tours. And there are still other 4 tours about shops, important trees, and about science, for instance, about the pandemics in Lisbon a long time. And it was a very, very interesting tour as well. So when I asked the guides what was exactly for them a team, only 5 guides could express what is a team according to what Sam Ham says about a team. 13 just explained the topic of the walking tour, and 2 gave 2 other different topics in the answer about what was a theme. So the results and findings of this questionnaire were that most people doing the walking tours are women, only 2 men for 18 women, and 70% of them were over 41 years old, 20% over 51. So it means that they are not young guides. The young guides don't create new walking tours, and it means also that they are experienced guides. The walks last for more than 2 hours. 1/3 of the walks last for more than 3 hours, which is quite a lot. And 70% of the guides work for more than 30 years. So in the audience, adults prevail, only 1/4 are teenagers, and 50% are colleagues. So other guides, to support colleagues or because of curiosity, they decided to do the walking tours of their colleagues. And so many were colleagues, and most people are Portuguese. 85% of the people are Portuguese. How did they provoke? With surprise, most of them telling something that was a surprise for the tourists. They provoke then others with questions, 25%, and with stories. They say that they relate the attraction or the phenomenon, if you prefer, with the audience. 75% say that they try always to relate the phenomenon with the audience, and 100% say that they make their audience discover new things, and they reveal new things to the audience. The things that they use, the rhetorics, the figures of speech that they use the most are metaphors, comparisons, and analogies, and examples. So they also use a lot of quotation, for instance, the king said, or shift in perspective. What if something happened? So these are the rhetoric elements that they use. They also use humor. Humor is present in always, 40%. 65% of them, irony is what they use the most. Funny answers to the questions, word plays and puns, and statements with dual meanings are the most important elements of humor that they use. They say that they use open-ended questions. 85% say that they use open-ended questions. but from my observation, I didn't see many open-ended questions being used in the walking tours. They don't use a lot of drama. The only thing that they use is to change their voice, imitating someone or some character. And 45% say that they don't use drama at all. They use the five senses, according to what they say. Besides sight and hearing, they use especially smell, taste, only 40%, and touch 30%. So they don't use 25% say that they don't use the senses. Storytelling, real stories are told by 100% of them, whereas legends or fiction is told to the audience only by 50% of the guides. They also say that they change tangible into intangible, 80%. Of course, I gave them always an example of what this means, so that they could say if they use this interpretation technique or not. And they use props. This is something that I saw that they all use different kinds of props, especially photos and postcards and drawings and maps and schemes. Those are the props that they use in most of the times. When I asked them if they make the audience participate in the walking tour directly, they say 60% of them say that they do it very often. Only 25% say that they always make the audience participate, and that's something that I also saw. The audience is very passive. They don't actively participate in the walking tour. I saw it when I followed the walking tours. But I saw also that they are very much eager to make people respect heritage. And that's something that they really try people to do. They talk about preservation of heritage. They say that they try to give inspiration for the people that attend the walking tours, and the walking tours are unique experiences. They are all different from what exists. So there are about different themes that didn't exist before when they created the walking tours, and I think that they are inspiring. Guides. So conclusions. There we have green and red conclusions. The green ones are that guides are experienced, mostly women, age over 45, and they are guiding for more than 21 years. The audience is adults, many colleagues that support the other colleagues, or they go there for curiosity as well. Along walking tours, they last for a long time, usually. And as far as the topics are concerned, literature prevails, but there are other different topics, of course. Children's principles are generally used by the guides, especially to reveal, also to relate, and a little bit less if we think about provoking. The most common interpretation means or techniques are rhetoric, humor, questions, storytelling, intangibles, and props. And I think they have a sustainable attitude towards the heritage preservation, or they are worried about heritage preservation, and they try to change customers' behavior, what is not exactly easy, and I don't know if they can actually do it. The red conclusions are that they are not, they have some difficulties to express the theme of their performance, of their tour. I think that most of what they know about interpretation was learned with experience, because they are experienced guides. They never they never contact in any way with theory. And so the guides are created, and do they innovate? Well, if we think that my sample is of 25 guides out of 350, and that this is only 7%, the other 93% didn't do anything, and they are not so creative. They just decided to change their jobs or to do nothing while we had the pandemic. What do we need? We need more nature-based walking tours because we don't have many in Lisbon. We need more active walking tours. As I told you, people are very passive. They don't participate a lot in the walking tours, and I think that is a pity. They should have activities, and they should have more variety of walking tours, like virtual tours in the outskirts of the capital city, and different things like about dance, about things that people are not very used to. What would be nice as well would be to compare what was done in Lisbon to what was done in other cities in Europe. But that could be for some other occasion. Thanks for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Luís, for this insight you gave us. How they act, how they perform, how they use the interpretation, the tourist guides in Lisbon. I think that everywhere this pandemic situation is very challenging. As far as I could see, you have 350 registered guides only for Lisbon or for whole Portugal?
Only for Lisbon.
Only for, okay. So
double for Portugal.
Yes. Okay, there are 2 comments so far and 1 question. I will read it, the comments. The one is from Mari Cardonato. It's a question: how can guides actually use interpretation in virtual live streams when there is no audience and no one needs to engage and interact in the virtual world? And the second comment comes from Yanya. It's really interesting for tour guides to question their work, and in the Interpret Europe training, most of them say it is something really relevant for them to hear the opinion of their colleagues. So she sees this option to include this kind of the questionnaires in her work before and after the trainings as a trainer. There is a question directly to you from Per Sonvik. How do you know what visitors take home with them? Did you interview them too? Thought listening.
Okay, so I'm starting by the first question about the virtual tours and the virtual reality and so on. From what I know from the people that I talked to and the guides I talked to, because they are also my friends and my colleagues, that virtual tours are especially important as a promotion. People see the things virtually, and the guide explains while walking, for instance, in the city with a camera on your head. You are seeing what the guide is talking about. And the most important thing is that this is promotion for the city. The people that see virtual tours usually see, that's a nice idea for my next trip. I'm going to go there and to see on my own or with a guide, many times with a guide that explain it virtually. I want to go with you and visit the city. So it's promotion for future clients in that destination, and that's very important. So everything that is virtual has also this advantage. Of course, it has disadvantages, and of course, all guides prefer to do things relating directly to the phenomenon. Everyone knows that, but this was a situation in a particular moment of the pandemic, and so some guides decided to make the virtual tours. The second question was about the opinion of the colleagues. It's of course very important to have the opinion of the colleagues and to debate how the tours are done so that you can improve them. And everyone has different ideas about the tours, so it's really nice to hear from your colleagues, and I think that's something that we should do more than we do, to hear from our own colleagues and not to keep our own ideas and our own knowledge to ourselves, but to share it with the rest of the people. Now, the third question, how do you know what visitors take home with them? I don't know what they take home with them, of course not. Although I interviewed a lot of tourists for my PhD thesis, 863 exactly, with questionnaires and also with interviews. So I know what they feel about, and they feel satisfaction. Satisfaction was something that I measured when I did my PhD thesis. What I can tell you is from what I saw with direct observation. I saw that people in the end were satisfied, and they talked for a little while about what they saw, and they changed ideas about it. But I don't know actually if what they take home, because I didn't interview them. Miguel, in your opinion, how open would these guides be to training on heritage
interpretation? The question is from Valia Stergioti. Yes. How open would these guides in Lisbon be to a training on heritage interpretation, like Interpret Europe's courses for certified interpretive guides? What do you think?
I plan to ask them if they're open to a course of interpretation, to a training on interpretation. But I would like to do the interpretive trainer course myself before I ask them if they want to do it. I think they are not very open. The old guys are not very open to this kind of training because they think that they know enough and they don't need it. And I know that young people are more open-minded, and they probably will be more open to this kind of training. Now, what do they think usually? They think that knowledge, facts are important. They always want, when we have a Congress in December every year, what they want is to know more information, more raw material, more knowledge to do the tours. I'm talking about the licensed guides here in Portugal. They want to know more and more. They care about the information and the knowledge, but they don't care about how to present this information that they have, how to interpret. This is something that comes after knowledge, and it's not very important for most of them because they believe that they know how to do it.
Okay, thank you very much, Luis.